Have you ever thought about who the most powerful dark wizard in the Harry Potter universe really is? What if Voldemort isn't the ultimate villain we've all believed him to be? In today's video, you'll find out why Gellert Grindelwald might actually be the greatest dark wizard of all time, and why Voldemort pales in comparison. For years, I was convinced that Voldemort was the most terrifying, unstoppable, and dangerous wizard in the wizarding world. He seemed invincible, striking fear into the hearts of everyone. His presence alone sent shivers down spines. I even declared him the greatest dark wizard in one of my previous articles. But then, something changed. A comment made me question everything. Someone suggested that Grindelwald, not Voldemort, deserved that title. At first, I dismissed it, but the more I read about Grindelwald, the more I compared his history to Voldemort's, the more I began to doubt my original stance. And now I've come to a shocking realization. Grindelwald wasn't just as powerful as Voldemort. He was stronger, smarter, far more dangerous, and I'm about to prove it. Before we dive in, just a quick disclaimer. This is my personal opinion. If you disagree, feel free to debate in the comments. Now let's get started. Voldemort was fueled by hatred toward his father, his mother, his teachers, muggles, muggle-borns, and basically anyone who wasn't bowing to him. His fear of death defined his entire existence. That fear led him to create Horcruxes, desperately trying to cheat fate. His followers weren't loyal out of admiration, they served him out of terror. Even his closest allies, like the Malfoys and Peter Pettigrew, feared him more than they respected him. At his core, Voldemort was a frightened, bitter child lashing out at the world. Grindelwald? He was different. He had vision. He wasn't just seeking power, he wanted to reshape the world. He believed in his own superiority and sought the Deathly Hallows to cement his dominance. Unlike Voldemort, he didn't force followers into submission. People followed him because they were captivated by his charisma, his ideals. He even managed to sway young Dumbledore, something Voldemort could never dream of. And unlike Voldemort, Grindelwald had regrets. In the end, he faced his own failures, acknowledged his crimes. That alone makes him a far more complex and compelling figure. Now let's talk about their impact. Voldemort started 2 wars. His reign of terror was brutal, but it was limited. He never dared to expand beyond Britain. Despite all his power, he remained a local villain. Grindelwald? He ignited a war that spread across Europe and even reached America. He wasn't just a threat to the UK, he was a global nightmare. His followers weren't just terrorizing wizards in one country. They were shaking the foundations of the entire wizarding world. His goal, the creation of a magical empire, a vision far grander than Voldemort's personal vendettas. He even built his own prison, Nurmengard, a fortress meant to hold his enemies. Ironic, considering it became his own final resting place. Now let's compare their magical abilities. Voldemort was undeniably skilled. He excelled in the dark arts from a young age, mastered Horcruxes, and even learned to fly without a broom. He was a formidable duelist, taking on some of the best wizards of his time. His battle with Dumbledore at the Ministry was intense, though it's worth noting that Dumbledore was already weakened at that point. Grindelwald, however, was a true prodigy. From his youth, he displayed extraordinary magical talent, quickly becoming one of Durmstrang's top students. His combat skills were unmatched. He defeated Aberforth Dumbledore, overpowered American auras, and mastered wandless magic. He fought entire squads of wizards and won. And let's not forget his duel with Dumbledore. Many call it the greatest wizarding battle in history. Unlike Voldemort's fight with a weakened Dumbledore, Grindelwald faced Albus at his peak. And he nearly won. That alone speaks volumes. So who truly stands above? Voldemort was feared. Grindelwald was revered. Voldemort ruled through fear. Grindelwald ruled through ideology. Voldemort's ambitions were personal. Grindelwald sought to change the world. In the end, there's no contest. Grindelwald wasn't just a dark wizard. He was a force of nature, a villain whose shadow loomed far beyond Voldemort's reach. Voldemort was a tyrant, a ruthless dictator who ruled with an iron fist. But Grindelwald? He was something far more dangerous. He was a visionary. He didn't just seek power, he convinced others that he deserved it. He wrapped his dark ambitions in grand ideals, in promises of a better world. His followers weren't cowards running from his wrath. They were believers, people willing to die for his cause. That's what made him truly terrifying. Voldemort's name inspired fear, but Grindelwald's name inspired loyalty. His influence spread not through brute force, but through persuasion. He didn't need to force people into submission. He simply spoke, and they followed. Even Dumbledore, the greatest wizard of his time, was once enthralled by him. Imagine the sheer power of a man who could hold the attention of someone like Dumbledore, who could plant seeds of doubt in his mind, who could make him wonder, just for a moment, if perhaps he was right. And let's not forget that Voldemort's rise was slow. He operated in the shadows, building his influence over decades, carefully plotting his return after his downfall. Grindelwald didn't need to do that. His rise was explosive. He didn't hide in the dark, waiting for the right moment. He took what he wanted and forced the world to take notice. He built an empire before he was even stopped. But what about their defeats? This is where the difference between them becomes even more striking. Voldemort's end was pathetic. He was destroyed by a schoolboy, not in an epic duel, not in a grand final battle, but in a moment of weakness. His arrogance blinded him to his own mistakes. He underestimated the power of love, of sacrifice, of the very things he despised. He died the way he lived, afraid, desperate, alone. Grindelwald's fall was different. He wasn't undone by his own mistakes. He wasn't defeated because he underestimated his enemy. He fought Dumbledore, one of the greatest wizards of all time, in a battle that shook the wizarding world. And he lost, not because he was weak, not because he made foolish choices, but because his opponent was simply stronger. That alone sets him apart from Voldemort. And then there's the aftermath. Voldemort's legacy faded almost instantly. Without him, his Death Eaters scattered, his influence crumbled, his empire fell apart like a house of cards. Grindelwald's ideas, on the other hand, didn't die with him. Even decades later, his name still held power. His philosophy still lingered in the minds of those who had once believed in him. Even in prison, he remained a symbol. And when Voldemort came looking for him, when he stood face to face with the man who had once terrorized the world, Grindelwald didn't cower. He didn't beg for his life. He didn't give Voldemort what he wanted. He stood defiant, mocking him, refusing to give him the answers he sought. He had lost everything, and yet, in that moment, he still held the upper hand. Voldemort needed the Elder Wand. He believed it would make him truly unstoppable. But Grindelwald? He had held that power and still lost. He knew that true strength wasn't in a wand. He understood something Voldemort never could. That power alone isn't enough. That's why even in defeat, he remained in control. And that's why, in the end, Grindelwald will always stand above Voldemort. He wasn't just a dark wizard. He was a leader, a manipulator, a master of both magic and minds. His impact stretched beyond a single war, beyond a single country. He reshaped the wizarding world in ways Voldemort never could. So the question remains, who was truly the greatest dark wizard of all time? The one who ruled through fear, or the one who ruled through belief? The one who fell at the hands of a boy,